So, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you had a chance to refuel, refresh, and Robert, if we could pick up with where we left off. Oh, perfect. Thank you. So, pulling us back into where we were before the break, we were looking at the ways that the fourth evangelist tells the story of that last meal together so very differently and so rich in symbolism for how we can understand Eucharist then and live Eucharist. And I was building up through the ways in which the evangelist is using water and spirit to help weave a theme together of birthing new life. And we get finally to the last discourse in chapter 16, where Jesus starts to speak very explicitly about his impending death and uses again a startling metaphor. And he gets explicit in chapter 16, where he says, "Very truly I tell you, you will weep and mourn, but the world will rejoice. You will have pain, but your pain will turn into joy. When a woman is in labor, she has pain because her hour has come. But when her child is born, she no longer remembers the anguish because of the joy of having brought a human being into the world. So you have pain now, but I will see you again, and your hearts will rejoice, and no one can take your joy from you." So he's giving them a pretty explicit image then about how to understand his death as a process of not only death, but birthing in the very same moment, a death to what has been as birthing new life. He's not the first one to use this image. He doesn't pull it out of a hat. It's already in the Old Testament, where Isaiah uses that same image for God who is rebirthing Israel after the death of the exile, and uses that same language. Isaiah saying, God saying through Isaiah, "I have looked away and kept silence. I have said nothing, holding myself in, but now I cry out as a woman in labor, gasping and panting." So, presenting Jesus' death as birth pangs, the fourth evangelist is placing the focus, notice, on the ensuing joy, not on the pain of bringing forth the new life. So there's my biggest complaint against Mel Gibson, his Passion. Did you see that? I didn't on purpose, but but from everything that I've heard about it, I heard that there was just a relentless emphasis on the torture, on the suffering, on the pain. And that's not at all the way the gospel tells the story. You notice that very little is given of the details of the crucifixion itself. And all the emphasis, as it is in John 16, is on the new life that comes forth, on the joy that comes through this. So let's return to the crucifixion scene one more time. And so all this theme of water and spirit has been leading us up to seeing the death of Jesus then as a moment of birthing. And the women there help to see us as them being midwives, if you were, of this new birthing. So Jesus' mother, prime among them, having given him physical birth, having birthed his public ministry as a kind of midwife, and now a kind of midwife to birth the renewed life of the beloved community. And then Jesus in this gospel His last words are not, my God, why have you forsaken me?" but simply, "It is finished." And so it's almost like when the birth pangs are over and the child is born, the cries of joy that the new child enters into the life of the community. And then in this gospel, when the body is taken down from the cross, it's wrapped in linen cloths. And for me, that reminds me of the swaddling of Jesus as a newborn in Luke's gospel. Now, I know I just did an exegetical no-no by crossing gospels, but anyway, that's where the imagery is taking me. And then when the risen Christ appears to his disciples and breathes on them and says, "Receive the Holy Spirit," it's like that moment of God birthing the first human being in Genesis, when the Creator breathes into its nostrils the breath of life in Genesis 2:7. And then finally, the image of the open tomb can symbolize the open womb from which the new life has emerged. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, well, I think only a 21st century feminist could see all this birthing stuff in the Gospel of John. And I wish we could claim originality, but actually, all the way back to Clement of Alexandria, as early as the 3rd century, Clement wrote about the body of Christ, which nourishes by the word the young brood, which the Lord himself brought forth in throes of flesh, which the Lord himself swathed in his precious blood, exclaiming, "Oh, amazing birth." Ambrose, similarly, refers to Christ as the virgin who bore us, who fed us with her own milk. And the medieval mystics loved this image of Christ as birthing. Julian of Norwich, for example, says that Jesus was our Savior and he is our true mother, in whom we are endlessly born and out of whom we shall come. As a Dominican, I have to throw in a Dominican. So the German Dominican mystic and scholar Meister Eckhart, in one of his writings, he muses, what does God do all day long? You know what his answer was? She lies on a couch giving birth all day long, lies on a maternity bed all day long giving birth. So this metaphor is so different from atonement theology. Birthing speaks of a love that is mutual and self-replicating, where suffering is not deserved or desirable, but gives value to travail as part of a process of bringing forth new life. One last thing that I want to say about the Johannine account of the Last Supper is that not only does the Johannine narrative invite us to reimagine our relationship with Jesus and with God, but also with one another as a community of friends, all with a place at the table, where differences of all kind are rendered irrelevant. Jesus says, the opening verse of chapter 13, the opening verse of the foot washing scene, it says that the people who were present, so here's your last pop quiz. Who was there at the Last Supper? In the Gospel of John, it's his own. Now that's an expression that Jesus uses throughout the entire gospel to refer to everybody who chooses to believe in him: women, men, Jews, Samaritans, and others. In this gospel, as you may have noticed, the 12 don't really play any role. There is no scene in the fourth gospel of the calling of the 12 or the sending of the 12. The person that embodies the sending out on mission as an apostle is the Samaritan woman, who goes and brings all of her townsfolk to believe in Jesus on the basis of her word. And then there are other scenes in this gospel where women like Jesus' mother and Mary and Martha of Bethany and Mary Magdalene all take prominent roles as proclaimers of the word and midwives of the new life birthed through faith in Jesus. They point to a different understanding of women's roles in the Johannine community. This gospel envisions the authoritative leader as a beloved friend whose gender is never revealed. Now, the synoptics, as you know, give us a different picture. In Luke, those present are his apostles, whom Luke previously had equated with the 12. Matthew and Mark explicitly say that Jesus sits at table with the 12, and then Matthew adds disciples. So we got more than one guest list here of who was there, who was actually there at the table. I just want to make one other comment and then conclude and open it up for your questions and comments. So the one other thing that we notice is that in Luke's gospel, in Luke's account, so I'm leaving John now, and one last comment about Luke, where Jesus comments to those who are there that he makes a comment about not eating or drinking again until all is fulfilled. And then when he's talking to the disciples, he makes a comment about them eating and drinking at my table in my kingdom and sitting on thrones to judge 12 tribes of Israel. There's an eschatological dimension that Luke's gospel brings into the Last Supper scene, where Jesus is where I think his words are pointing to us that what Eucharist does is give us a foretaste of what's going to be completed in the final fulfillment of the reign of God. So let me wrap up. So as we conclude these reflections on the gospel accounts of the Last Supper, let me summarize. We've explored the root meaning of the word sacrifice, and we've signaled some of the dangers inherent in using sacrificial language to refer to Jesus' death and to the Eucharist. And we noted that in the New Testament, sacrifice is not often used of Jesus' death, and it's absent from the gospel accounts of the Last Supper. What emerges in these accounts are words and symbols that help us understand Jesus' life and death as embodying the love of the Trinity, costly, self-giving love of laying down one's life for one's friends, a self-gift of service that evokes the same response in the recipient. In our Eucharistic gatherings, we remember, that is, we make truly present Christ's transformative power of forgiveness, of restoration, of healing broken relationships, a gift offered to all, for the many, not just some. We experience Christ's prayer for us that enables us to turn back when we've gone astray, and then to become a source of strength to one another. And when we drink from the cup, we are strengthened for the suffering that discipleship entails, and we are lifted into exuberant joy. At Eucharist, we experience intimacy with our friend Jesus and with all his other friends, the same intimacy that we had with the Creator, that he had with the Creator. We are emboldened to be apostles to those outside our circle of friends, drawing all into divine love. And we can envision circular, inclusive ways of being a community of friends, where all distinctions and differences are rendered irrelevant, and where leaders pour themselves out in love for one another, and where the costly labor pains of self-gift lead to birthing of new life. All these real changes that Eucharist effects in us speak of the true meaning of sacrifice, to live consecrated, holy lives that embody a new mode of Christ's presence, that proclaim the enduring merciful love of God, whose covenantal promises have never been broken, and whose Spirit is consecrating the whole of the cosmos, not only those who believe in Jesus, but every person and being God has created. Pretty amazing gift, no? So I would like to stop talking now and invite you to reflect at your tables. How has what we have shared today, how does that connect with your understanding and your living out of precious blood spirituality? Is that a fair enough question? You can take it anywhere you want, but I'd like to give you a good 20 minutes or more to talk at your tables, and if you need a little bit more, we can stretch. We've got till noontime. I just want to make one remark at the end. But I'd like some time to have you reflect back with group, not reporting out from every table, but just if there's a pearl of great price that surfaces that you want to share, that we'll have time to do that. And also if there's any questions or comments that you want to make. Okay? So let's take 20 minutes to reflect on how does this intersect with precious blood spirituality. How are you doing? Are you ready to come back to the group of the whole? I'd like to invite you to let the person who's speaking, before I so rudely interrupted, let them finish their thought, and then come back to the group of the whole. So are there any pearls that came out of your conversation, something you'd like to share, something you'd like to ask a question about, make a comment about? I think I see microphones in a couple different places. If you feel moved to share, if you'd identify who you are and then share what it is you'd like to say. Oh, more introverts than extroverts. Thanks, Bill.
Me too. I've never met you.
You know who your friends are.
Yeah. So my name is Jen Morin Williamson. I'm the Justice Coordinator for the Sisters of the Precious Blood in Dayton, Ohio. Our table back here, I asked the question as a non-vowed lay person to the priests at our table, like, do you ever have difficulty during Mass saying chalice or saying many? And the answer they gave was really very powerful to me, that they said that they've made a commitment to these words, and who are they to question these words, but how you emphasize them can make a big difference. And I thought that was pretty powerful, because I hadn't thought of it that way, and it does rub me the wrong way when I hear it in Mass. I want to say cup, I want to say all, but now I'm going to look for that, and I appreciated that comment. So thanks, table.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, I'm not sure, would the liturgical priest, would the liturgical police take action if you snuck in the in front of many? It depends on where you live.
Hi, my name is Ann O'Brien. I'm a companion from Albia, Iowa. And at our table, we talked about, I'll just say I talked about, I really liked your reference to the new creation and birth, like the birthing process and how that all went. And I had several priests at my table, but they agreed with me, which I was really happy about, because I'm kind of a feminist type person, but really liked how you explained that, as made me think of it in a different light, and how, because my number one question when I get to heaven is, why did you allow everybody to suffer so much? So that kind of puts a more of a different outlook on it. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. You didn't deal with any light stuff at your table. Number one question about suffering, yeah, that one could take us the rest of our lives. Mm-hmm.
I'm Fran Schumer. I'm an adorer of the blood of Christ. And one of the things that came up at our table is, and I started it partly, one of the issues that I have is that I think the church does not help, but often reinforces this feeling of unworthiness and, I need to be saved. And now I'm lucky because I live at our Wichita Center, and our chaplain does a very fine job. But sometimes when we have visiting priests, or if for some reason I go to a parish church, I cringe at the penitential rite because I know what's coming. It's going to be the Confiteor, which I cannot pray because I do not believe that I have grievously sinned. I'm not perfect. I believe I've sinned, but not grievously. And I can't say that I'm not worthy at communion time, because I am worthy, because God has said the word, and I am healed. And to me, that's a whole different stance and fits in with what you talked about in terms of the emphasis on life and birthing. It doesn't diminish the cost, but it puts the emphasis, I think, in a different place.
Thank you very much.
As usual, Sister drafted me. You should go up there. What really struck me in the debate on women's ordination, the common argument is, well, Jesus didn't call the women, he called men. And my response has been somewhat defensive. Well, he didn't have to call the women, they came on their own. But I don't like it because it's defensive. I loved that in the first century or two, it was the head of the household. And that doesn't exclude anybody or get defensive. It also struck me that with the later concentration on it becomes sacrifice of atonement, sacrifice needs to be officiated by a priest. Head of the household doesn't. And besides getting concentrated on sin, I'm currently really trying to get into Matthew Fox's original blessing, that woman, birth, gets us back to the other side of the yin and yang on gift. And a big part of what we need to be doing is how do we develop and grow gift, not just how do we atone for sin. So I really thank you for the head of the household. I tried taking a picture of that slide, but I think it went too fast, so I'm hoping this is recorded and we can get it. Thank you.
Be happy to share it with you. Thank you very much. You know, the comment about Jesus never called women says, well, then you're presuming that we have every single solitary thing that Jesus ever said or did written in the Gospels. And you know, the fourth evangelist ends the gospel by saying, there's so much more that's not written down. And so, you know, it's crystal clear that there were women who were disciples that followed him, that did all the same things that the men disciples did, and that had leadership positions. And so clearly, you know, however the call happened, you know, and we don't all experience call the same way either. Sometimes it's a gentle nudging from within that urges us to volunteer ourselves. Others are dragged kicking and screaming. It happens in different ways. It wasn't just Jesus walking by the seashore and say, okay, y'all come follow me. And it happens very differently in the Gospel of John. If you notice the call of the first disciples, it's not Peter that's first, and it's a domino way that people come to Jesus in the Gospel of John. And you know, one person encounters Jesus, and then they go and get another person and bring them to Jesus. That's different than the way the synoptics tell the story with the first fisherman and with Levi, the toll collector. Clearly in Luke 8, that's the only gospel that has them in the middle of the story. All the others have them at the end of the story. But at Luke 8, the Mary Magdalene, Joanna, and Susanna, and the other Galilean women are clearly with Jesus on the road. And it says they're ministering with him. And at the end of all four Gospels, it says the women, they name it's different names in different Gospels, but the women had been, the verb is in the imperfect, had been ministering with him, had been following. Two key verbs that have to do with discipleship. Diakonein and so to minister or to serve, and following akolotheo. And they're both in the imperfect, so they had been doing this, is what the meaning is. That we don't have the story of how they started? Really? how does that, I've never been able to see the connection between the fact that we don't have the story of how they started to follow Jesus, how that has become an argument for excluding women from certain ministries. It just doesn't compute. And if you want, what's more important, I think, are the scenes in which he explicitly sends them to go and tell the good news, and they do. So, more on that this afternoon. Any other questions, comments, thoughts from your discussion?
Basically about midwifery, the word doulos.
Mm-hmm.
I know a woman who wanted to become a death doula, and it's spelled almost exactly the same, but I don't know. Is there any woman in the mind, we don't know these things, the men. Is that the same meaning, that we are all midwives of justice, midwives of a new creation?
I love that interpretation, yes. Yes. Yeah. No, I love that imagery. I know that less open men than the ones in this room would struggle with oh, she wants us to get into birthing imagery. That's for women. But I also think of all the years that women have had to put ourselves in the place of Peter being called, and try to imagine ourselves in that space. And so, but I think that imagery of birthing can transcend gender distinctions. That it is something that we can all be spiritual birthers. We can all, I think that's one of the reasons why the fourth evangelist leaves Jesus' mother unnamed. It leaves it open then that any one of us that's reading the story, hearing or putting ourselves in the story can take the position of the one that is giving birth to Jesus and to his ministry in our day. Yeah. Good. One more? Two more.
Thanks, Barbara. I'm Matt Link. I'm pastor out at Most Holy Redeemer in San Francisco. I was blessed many years ago to have Barbara as my New Testament professor, and it's always so good to see you and hear from you. So our table, we did something really simple. We just simply went around the table, and it started out as just introducing ourselves, saying where we're from, where we minister, but it turned into exactly what Meister Eckhart said. We all, I won't get the quote quite right, but aren't we all called to be mothers of God? We're all called to bring God forth into the world. So just simply giving our story, just a little, we spent the whole time, we could have gone on and on and on, but how do we live out this? How do we live out precious blood spirituality? How do we birth God into the world? Just by telling our story, we're great examples of that. So, that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Matt. Good to see you again.
So good to see you, Barbara. Thank you.
Good. Great. Thank you. And there was one more? Please.
My name is Jim Gaynor. I'm now in Dayton, Ohio. But as I was thinking about, in the Eucharist, the liturgy, we say when I was, as I recall, when it was in Spanish, where I was celebrating just a few years ago, we would say para todos. And then here, in English, we don't say for all. But is that something, is it just here or is it worldwide where this has been changed from what was being said liturgically before for all, and now it's just for many?
Those of you who are missionaries and who have experience elsewhere, what do you know? How can you help answer that question? I'll just tell you personally that in 2011, when the new translation came out, I was so distressed that I started going to Our Lady of Guadalupe Parish for a while. So because they weren't using in the Spanish Mass, they weren't using they were still saying por todos, etc. And it was just easier on my soul, you know.
My name is Seraphim the Syrian from Dayton. But originally I'm coming from Tanzania. The translation of mene, I think is, I can say, even in Tanzania we are using that. And it had a long discussion before being accepted. Because in Swahili we use weng instead of wote. Wote it means all, weng it means many. And then to explain that, even how the salvation is just for many and not for all, was a long discussion. And I know that Swahili, miso has been translated from English. When you changed, we were supposed also to change. But it was a long, long discussion until the bishops, they enforced that we have to. So myself, when I celebrate the Mass, in my mouth, I'm saying many, but inside myself is all. I'm sorry to say that, but that is the reality.
And many of us who are not the ones who have to pronounce the words for the whole congregation, we just say our own version.
Sure.
Sometimes you get looks from people sitting next to you. Other times they join you. So, Dennis?
Hi, I'm Dennis Christ, and Barbara was one of my teachers when I was doing my doctoral work. And when they were revising the missal, when they were throwing out the sacramentary and giving us a missal, they even changed the name of the book. There are many conversations among the members of the Catholic Academy of Liturgy, specifically on this issue. And while my French goes all the way back to my high school years, and I can still say good morning. In the French sacramentary, I believe, or the French missal, it says, pour la multitude. And la multitude.
Yeah, just
So
putting the
just
article
putting
in there.
the article in there.
The
And
many.
and if we said for the multitude, it would be heard differently than for the many. But it was this conservative group called Vox Clara that was inspired by EWTN people to protest to the Vatican, and Vox Clara became the primary translator, even though they were not appointed by the English-speaking bishops. They were imposed upon the English-speaking bishops. The English-speaking bishops approved a sacramentary, the second edition, which has never been published because it had too many good things in it. And they used a kind of English that would be understood by common people, so that it never says my favorite word. It's on the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. prevenient grace. So all of you who don't have any prevenient grace, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter.
Thank you, Dennis. So as we, I don't want to end on a note where the words are getting us all tied up into knots, but just to reframe ourselves, to remember what is the deep sense of the spirituality of the precious blood that you all carry and share with others, a meaning that transcends anything that we can put into words, and that we can overcome words that are grating to our ears, and as we stay rooted in that deep understanding of precious blood spirituality. I thank you for letting me have this time with you, though not, though carrying predominantly in me Dominican spirituality, but I think we're friends in this. Robert, if we could have the last slide, one of the last things I have to say on top of thank you is that they only let me out of CTU if I promise to share with you what we have available at CTU. And so many of you are grads of CTU and already know this, but for those of you who may not know, we got lots of good free stuff available to you on our website. We also have courses that you can audit that are very inexpensive to audit or take for credit or do a degree program, or if you've been saying, I need to go back to school again and do a DMin now that I have a master's degree. You don't have to come to Chicago. You can stay right where you are. Everything that we offer is available remotely as well. So in our classrooms, we've got 3 big screens in every classroom. People who are physically there and all the people who are remotely there are easily able to interact together. Some of our courses are asynchronous, and you can do them any time of the day or night that you want to. We have lots of lectures and symposia that we live stream almost everything, and then we record it and we house it at learn@ctu.edu, learn@ctu.edu. So, and if you haven't been to the Holy Land or to, well, it's a little dicey going to Israel and these days, Israel and Palestine, but Greece and Turkey is still okay to go to, and we're launching a new trip, an interreligious trip, focusing on Christian, Muslim, and Jewish spiritualities and legacy in Spain. So if you want to go to Spain, that's next May, June. So check out our offerings on CTU's website. Or if you want to get our weekly scripture reflections, just give me your email address and we'll put you on the list and share those with you. I also just want to say that if you're not familiar with the Wisdom Commentary series, that's a series that it's a series of commentaries on every book of the Bible that's published by Liturgical Press, and I'm the general editor for it. And every one of the books, every one of the commentaries comes at the scriptures from a rather fresh perspective with a predominantly feminist lens to open up these kinds of insights that you've experienced today. So Wisdom Commentary series published by Liturgical Press. And if you like Luke, I and my colleague Shelley Matthews wrote the commentary on the Gospel of Luke, 2 volumes. So, so now that I've made the pitch, I want to thank you very much for your engagement on this topic, for the invitation to be with you today. It's a real privilege and a real joy. And I'll see some of you this afternoon to talk about women in Eucharist. So thank you so much.
Thank you again, Barbara, for your presentation. Right now, our next event is lunch, which will be down in the tent. We are asking you, please, to take all of your personal items from the table. Do not leave any personal items on your table during lunch. the staff will be coming in here and redoing the room for our dinner tonight. After lunch, our breakout sessions start at 1:30. So enjoy your lunch.